Alright, so I've got the brackets done. I've got the ribs fitted. I sanded just a tiny bit on the rear left corner of both the front and rear of each one just to make it a tiny bit looser. Get the ribs back on. Now I'll mix up some epoxy and glue the scab plates inside wherever a bracket will bear. So inside here and there, inside here and there, on both sides here and here, and here at the root, also on both sides of each spar. These guys I cut up ages and ages ago. So I'll mix up some epoxy. Might take 2 batches because some of those pieces of wood are huge. So I'll do that, and I'll use a ton of clamps just to get good clamping pressure around, wipe up the squeeze out, and let that cure tonight. And then probably tomorrow, I could even, I'll probably let it cure tonight. Put on, maybe first thing in the morning, put on 2 coats of varnish just to the scab plates, and then also on the outside of the spars in these 2 spots here and here where washers, the AN970 washers, will bear on the wood. Because I'm going to put the scab plates and the brackets on and the bolts and the washers after that, and whatever's under those needs to be treated with with varnish prior to that assembly. So that's where I'm at now. Just a quick note before you glue these on, so make sure they're in the correct orientation, and you do that by lining up the 2 holes here with these 2 holes, and make sure that the scab plate is behind the bracket. If I put this on the wrong way, the bracket, you can see this hole here actually is unsupported a little bit. Here, there's a tiny bit, just a tiny sliver where the bracket's unsupported, but that doesn't even matter. What really matters is that the scab plate is behind where the bolts are, where the bulk of the force will be when you bolt the thing down. So make sure this is orientated correctly before you glue it on, or you'll be cussing and swearing, and you'll make a big mess. So that's wrong. This is right. Make sure that these are both oriented the correct way. Set those in place. I'll do the same for the scab plates on this one using the correct brackets, the other brackets for that guy. Just a tip that could save you some high blood pressure. So I've got about 65 clamps on here. Might be better just to use blocks or the brackets themselves. I don't want to get epoxy on the brackets, but you could use the brackets or blocks for clamping pressure and get away with fewer clamps. Anyway, clamp those things on there, let the epoxy cure real well, and then proceed to the next step. And it took 2 batches of epoxy. When I got to this one, I almost ran out of epoxy, and then I realized, or actually I did run out of epoxy, then I realized I had one more set to do at the other end. So what I should have done was mixed up another batch, been a little more liberal with my application of epoxy on these, and I still would have had epoxy left over. So just keep an eye on how much you've got left, and if you need a second batch, then you may not be quite as low as you think you are. So keep an eye on that. Depends how you mix your epoxy. So I got all the scab plates epoxied in place. That set overnight. This morning I got up and mixed up some epoxy varnish, and I put 2 coats of varnish on all the scab plates and on the outside of these 2 spots here where the washers will bear. And I don't know if you can see it now, I've placed the drag wires in here. Those 2 are 24 inches long, these are 24 inches long. One of these is 23 3/4 and the other one is 25 or 23 1/2 and 25 3/4, I think. So make sure you got the right lengths, 24 here, and then the 2 different lengths on the inboard bay there. Place those where you think they should go. And what I mean by that is you kind of have to feed them through the structure, the rib structure here, and you'll probably have to give it a shot, and then it won't line up probably, and you have to snake it back through and feed it through a different one of these sections until they're approximately in line with their holes here. So those are ready to go. The next thing I'll do will be, I'll take these two guys, any pair of these, this pair, that pair, or the brackets on the end, and the compression tube. So I'll take this, put that there, take the other one, put it there, and then the only way this can go on, you've got to do it this way. You've got to put both of those on and then slide it straight down between the spars, because the ribs are holding the spars at a specific distance apart. So you can't like put this down there and then pull it back and squeeze it on the end once they're between here, because the spars won't move apart any further. So you got to do this. Slide these down through here, and then I'll take the bolts and feed the bolts through this bracket, and then through the through this aluminum plate, and then on through the spar. And you'll do that for everything except the inboard bay, the most inboard bay. I may just stick a well, there's no compression tube on the inboard bay. There'll be a piece of spruce that you epoxy to the butt rib, but that'll come later. So anyway, this is the next thing I'll work on. I still need to drill holes on the end there, and I'll show you that later. But basically, put these guys in here, put the bolts through the drag wires, and then I can actually even tighten up these drag wires and square up these bays. It's called trammeling. And then I can drill those holes and put those brackets on, put those bolts through the drag wires. But you can't tighten those wires yet because there's no compression member holding the end apart. It'll just squeeze the spars together. So leave those loose, but you can get it all hooked up. At that point then you'd need to fit the butt rib, fit that compression piece, and then once that's epoxied in place, tighten that one up. So that's the sequence. So I'll put this compression tube in, this one in, and that one in, and then I can tighten up these two bays and square up those two bays, or trammel them.